Hey, Podnutsians, welcome to Mini PC Show number 97. This show is brought to you by John, aka Isle of Tiki. He's also a fan of The Makers, another show I would really like to get ramped back up. Thank you for your patronage, John. If you would like to become a Patreon of this show, all you gotta do is go to patreon.com/slash mini PC, the Mini PC Show. Link will be in the notes. And sooner or later, I'll start charging people for it. This week I'm joined by Rich, Flying Rich. How's everything going, man? Can't hear you.
Everything is fantastic in Flying Rich Land. Nearest hurricane's 100 and change miles away. We're good.
Well, that's a start to good. Yeah, so by watching the map, which I almost never do, it did look like you got like skimmed by the hurricane, but no actual like brunt force trauma.
So Hurricane, what was the last name of the hurricane?
Daria?
Dorian. Okay, so Dorian was originally projected to take down my house as a Category 5. But it didn't, and I was supposed to go away that weekend, and I didn't. I only hauled like 4,000 pounds worth of steel shutters and screwed them onto the side of my house. But the weird thing was Dorian finally passed in the early AM hours Tuesday night, so after midnight Monday. But the worst effect we had was the Thursday before 7 a.m. Very heavy wind, very heavy rain, lasted 15 minutes, and that was it.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, the two things that can damage the most is rain from the water damage and wind from just sheer strength.
Yeah, so end result was pretty much no more crap in my yard than a windy week. A normal windy week. So no big cleanup, no nothing.
Well, that's a plus. I will say I'm right by the water of the Chesapeake Bay. We just got a little bit of rain. I believe I even heard up in Canada, Candu-Adia, there was some effect felt like maybe like 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked on that one because I heard it was still a hurricane in Canada, but I was looking at it on the, nhc.noaa.gov, and it was a tropical storm or a depression or whatever. It was not a hurricane. I don't know if the winds increased and then went back down, but that was kind of weird.
Yeah, I always heard them scale it down, scale it down, scale it down. This time I never heard that. So, it's newscasters.
Could be. Yeah, and everybody was teasing me at work because on my YouTube channel for Irma, I put like my NRA cap on. I took a black garbage bag, and ripped holes for my neck and arms, and I stood out there and I did the live hurricane forecast. Because I hate to say it, I I understand what the media does and why, but for it to say live above somebody's head and him to be standing next to the beach where there's waves and wind and getting rained on and yelling in the wind where you can't hear him, you could just insert any other storm that ever occurred in the last 100 years. It'd be the same.
Yeah, and even though it's live, nothing's ever live anymore. It's always at least seconds delayed, if not minutes.
Which I remember, I was still bouncing back and forth between Florida and New York, and I was watching one of the New York stations, News 12 Long Island, and they're predicting this hellacious snowstorm, and there's this woman in the parka out on the sidewalk, and it was like maybe somebody ripped open a beanbag and a couple of the foamies fell out, but you still could see the street. She's like, it's sticking. It's very slick out here. It's like, lady, we can see what's going on. Don't try to sell us this bill of goods. It's no big deal. But they were talking it the heck up.
Right. Well, I mean, that's their job to over dramatize. Is there anything new in your realm in the worlds of mini PC, mini computing, or IoT type stuff?
Yeah, bigger to-do list.
Well, that never goes down, does it? Well,
uh, so James Middendorf, I don't have. Oh, all right. So yes, there is, and there's something for everybody. The big to do is that yes, Micro Center has 4 gig Pi 4s available. You can walk in and buy one, but only buy one, because if you buy more than one, the price goes up. So bring a friend if you're going to buy more than one. So James Middendorf, I'd sent money to, buy one and send it to me. He was able to get one and ship it out to me. So you can check. You can go to microcenter.com and you can punch in your nearest micro center and see if they have stock. So you can possibly walk in and buy a Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gigs.
well, very cool. But I'll say, I've heard a couple podcasts say there's no point to getting the 4 gig version. So why would you care about the 4 gig version?
More is better.
Always. When is it not? That's like Bill Gates saying we'll never need more than 64K of RAM. Anybody that does
16K.
not, well, you know what I mean. Anybody that thinks getting more resources available isn't optimal, isn't ideal, isn't beneficial, isn't the smart way to go, is a moron. I have no problem saying that. And
So-
speaking of morons, I forgot to mention, I'm the moron. Frequent emailer to this show, 5150, passed away in case no one knew. Last week on Tilts, they had a good little spiel there in the beginning for 5150. Lennox Lugcast, all one word, has had at least one show. I believe they're going to do a second show here this week dedicated to them, to 5150. I did a Linux for the rest of us, basically where I talked about him for a little bit. I'll just say the worst thing about getting old is seeing people around you fall off. I still don't know how he died. I still don't know why he died. I'll just say this. I knew the day I met him, he was not in good health. But I still don't like seeing him pass. So we're not going to see any more emails from 5150.
So Fitty, as I would tease him, he enjoyed, let's see, I'm assuming food, liquor, and guns. So the first two are not a healthy, good combination. The second can be lots of fun. And so the common joke is, well, I think it was Ohio Linux Fest. I spooned with 50, but I'll tell the story. It's not what it sounds like. Basically, 50 was very generous, and his actual name was Don Greer. Don's like, hey, I got a room. I've done this. Oftentimes I have financial issues, probably because I buy expensive crap and then figure out how to pay for it later. And like getting married, that was buying a. Did I say that? Anyhow, so I did this with Northeast Linux Fest. I drove up there. I think I slept part of the night in my car, and then I slept on the floor in your room door. And 50 had a spare bed, so I jumped in with him. Not literally. He had a spare bed. But in the middle of the night, like some former hotel worker still had like the universal key to all the doors, and he was going down the hall and sliding the key in each door and seeing which one opened up. I don't know if he was looking to steal something or if he was drunk and looking to crash or what. But 50 woke up and chased the guy out. And from now on, when I travel, I chain my hotel door.
Yeah, I was always told that 50 slept very light. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I don't like how everyone always speaks nicely of people when they die, so I'll say this. 50 could be a jerk. He could be a definite jerk.
What are you going to say when I go?
Because let me tell you something. In like IRC back in 2000 or so, he would say things just to get a rise out of people. And that's like the definition of what modern day trolling is. He would say things getting a rise out of people, but what he said wasn't inaccurate. what he said was very accurate, but and he knew he was getting a rise out of people, and he enjoyed that. He literally enjoyed that. He enjoyed making people think. Sometimes he was jerky about it. Sometimes he was nice and comical about it. But yeah. Now,
So I have an online rule. I will not say anything to anybody online that I wouldn't say to their face.
well, that I can't do that. I have to say less than that because I'll say a lot to people's faces.
You got the point.
Yeah. And I'll say this, in my mini PC world, not much has really changed. The Raspberry Pi 4 with the Ice Tower is still running absolutely remarkable. I will say I do now believe I've seen videos from both ETA Prime and Explaining Computers with his disgusting fingernails and all, showing off the Ice Tower and the Raspberry Pi 4, and how quite literally it does seem like nothing can even remotely come close to its cooling potential. Now, there's good enough, and then there's, this thing. I could have probably spent a quarter of the money and got good enough cooling, but I do enjoy getting ultimate cooling where I never have to worry about overtaxing this processor, because I have put it through its paces, and it literally is the most desktop-like experience I've ever had on a mini computer.
Okay, so a couple of things. Ooh, and I have like the monitors on my desk. Well, I've just replaced them. So my home monitors that I've been using, I don't know if they were 21 inch, they might have been 21s, but they had DVI and VGA connectors. So I trolled Craigslist and I found a company, going out of business, and they're liquidating assets, and they're selling 23-inch monitors for $50 a piece.
That's nice.
And or was it 40? $50 a piece. And I got every cable. I didn't get a box or anything, but the monitors all look great. They have DVI, VGA, and HDMI. And now I got cables that I can plug both my Mac into a two-monitor setup and the Raspberry Pi 4 into a two-monitor setup. And I have the cables from when I had, let's see, the Droid Bionic, which had a micro HDMI on it. And I'm going to pimp myself again. So if you go to flyingrich.com and look through my YouTube feed, I have a bunch of like 3 different solutions for cooling the Raspberry Pi 4. It's slightly a lie, but for $4.50, you can cool the Raspberry Pi 4. It'll be absolutely silent. You'll never thermal throttle, even with the clock upgraded. The lie is you got enough stuff. You got to buy like $9 worth of stuff and divide it out to get the $4.50 between the heat sinks and the fans. But if you're sharing, that works out. So my what I did is I'm running a 12-volt fan at 5 volts. It doesn't make a dang noise. And you can see that in the video, the last cooling video I did. And things running perfect. I don't hear anything, and I'm pretty damn happy about it.
Very cool. I'll say I watched a fair amount of people on YouTube with the Raspberry Pi 4 and talking about cooling active versus passive and everything. Passive is, I don't want to say pointless, but it's near pointless in 2019 with these processors and these heat that they draw. Granted, I don't think I've seen a broad spectrum of type of passive cooling, but every passive cooling thing I've seen has only minimally affected temperature, where nearly any kind of active cooling, any kind of fan system has been more dramatic in keeping things cool. Yeah, and I will say, I still believe the only actual use case for a dual monitor setup with one of these devices is if one screen is devoted to being remoted into a more powerful computer, and the one screen is your normal Raspberry Pi desktop.
So my original goal, and this is going back probably 4 years ago, is I wanted to have a device, a single board computer that had two displays on it that I could either VPN in or VNC in, or why did I say VPN? VNC or remote desktop in or whatever into another VM. Like I have a home VM lab that I could remote into. So, because I would carry my MacBook Pro around with me and it wouldn't necessarily be plugged in on my desktop. But if I had something I could shell into or use directly, that was a great solution. So now I'm pretty much there. I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't implemented it yet, but I have all the stuff. I just got to plug it together.
Very cool. Yeah, I am a slight bit hesitant to take the Raspberry Pi and the Ice Tower and put it in my backpack and transport it back and forth to work. Even though the Ice Tower seems like rock solid on it, it ain't never moving, period. I'm still just a touch bit hesitant to do it. I would like to get at least a case for the bottom of the Raspberry Pi and leave the top completely uncovered. I will say this. To put a case on such a device where you require passive cooling, I'm not sure a case is the right way to go, is what I'll say.
Yeah, a case with ventilation on it. So the other thing I don't like about the Ice Tower is if you're going to be doing any kind of stackable cluster, and I want to circle back to one more point. Uh, the way you would do it, I guess, with that, like you can't tightly stack, but if you put bottom board and bottom board together, back to back, and so you have the coolers facing out, you could pair them up like that and increase density. But stacking them is kind of a pain in the butt. Also, if you do it back to back, what that also means is you're going to have cables coming off either side. So if you're doing monitor or, let's see, power cables will be coming off two different sides. So stacking is a little bit of a problem if you're doing some sort of higher density cluster. I want to hit the 4 GB topic again. 4 GB of RAM. If you're thinking of a single board computer running a single application and you're done, fine. You only need a gig of RAM, or you're in the Bill Gates original quote camp. What I'm looking for, and I'm kind of shocked because VMworld has came and gone, and there's no word about ESXi Pi, where a year ago there was, the keynote speech. He pulled a Raspberry Pi out of his hand and started, saying ESXi is running on this. I'm like, well, now it's got 4 gigs of RAM and a more powerful processor, two display ports. I should say two HDMI ports to be specific. Where is the whole ESXi on it? But you can run Docker on it, and that's what I'm looking to do, is set up some sort of Docker swarm with all the stuff that I run at my house. And I'm still kind of noobish on Docker, but I'm getting more interested in it and definitely thinking about doing something with that.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll say, I don't care what you're doing. RAM is always faster than a disk. So
Absolutely.
you always want more RAM, period. And if you had any idea, these other podcasts, if you had any idea how computers work, if you have an air quotes extra RAM, then you can create what's called a RAM disk, which would make everything that you run on a disk virtualized in RAM, so it runs even faster. So to purposefully go for less RAM, the only reason to do it is to save money. I believe it's $35 still for the 1 gig, $55 for the 4 gig. If you do not option for the 4 gig model, I personally feel like you're doing everything a disservice in whatever you're doing with that board. More RAM always makes everything go better, period.
I think it depends on your target use case. I would say if it's not breaking the bank, yeah, go big or go home. If you need multiple devices, let's say you're running PiAware, 1 gig is fine. Let's say you're setting up your PiAware receivers. Yeah, just go with the 1 gig. But if you're doing something now and you might do something bigger in the future, 4 gig is the way to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're doing like digital signage and you need 40 of these things and you need to put one in each doctor's office or dentist office or chiropractor office or whatever, then yes, go for the cheapest one possible to maximize your profit. But if you're doing enthusiast type projects, shut your mouth. Don't listen to people like RMS who gets kicked out of organizations, get the 4 gig, and roll around in the mud like a pig.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will say the only other bit of Raspberry Pi, in air quotes, related news, there really isn't any, I'll say this, related news, Rich, but let me see if I can find it quickly. Yeah, line 1023 in the notes. This was one of the last links I got from 5150. I'm 99% sure. If it wasn't 5150, now I feel really upset and I feel disgruntled. But I'm pretty sure it's 5150, where he was encouraging me to look at a project called Freedom Bone. Actually, it might have been Captain Zero that told me about this. But here's the thing that I've really found the most shocking about Freedom Bone. If you go to their factoid on the Freedom Bone website, you get you get a question and you get an answer, and I'll make sure this is being displayed to the video watcher. Why not support building images for the Raspberry Pi? This is a factoid on freedombone.net. Why not support building images for the Raspberry Pi? Here's their answer. The Freedom Box project supports Raspberry Pi build, and the image build system for Freedom Bone is based on the same system. However, although the Raspberry Pi can run a version of Debian, it requires a closed proprietary blob, bootcode.bin, in order to boot the hardware. Who knows what that blob might contain or what exploits it could facilitate. From a adversarial point of view, if you were trying to deliver a bulk equipment interface, then it does not get any better than piggybacking on something which has control of the boot process and hence all subsequent run processes. That might be considered bad, but the tail goes downhill from here. Of the 6 CPU cores on the recent models, only 4 of those cores are ARM processors. The other are GPU cores, which run a proprietary operating system owned by Microsoft called the ThreadX system. This operating system is the real controller of the Pi, with the ARM cores as secondary and dependent processes systems. It does not matter if you never display any graphics. ThreadX is still ultimately in absolute power of the operating system and has access to everything. Deep breath. Okay. This is what basically I've been trying to say to people for years. I've had more than a couple people send me incredibly nasty, incredibly mean-spirited, and incredibly vulgar emails about how stupid I am, how incompetent I am, how wrong I am, and how the Raspberry Pi is not closed. I tried in my best way to convey to them the truth, but these guys, I think, state it pretty accurately in a very concise way. The core operating system of the Raspberry Pi is not Debian. It's a Microsoft operating system called ThreadX, which is itself a closed source binary blob linked to bootcode.bin file. So we are not in control of everything on our Raspberry Pis. Somebody else is, and that somebody else is literally Microsoft. So I respect Freedom Bone for not supporting the Raspberry Pi. But at the same token, I really wanted to install their operating system on a Raspberry Pi. So I spent a good 4 hours trying to work around their support issue, and I couldn't get the damn thing working to save my life. So I'm going to load it on another device. I just don't know which one.
Okay, so there's a hyperlink into a Wikipedia page for ThreadX, and it says developed and marketed by Express Logic of San Diego, California, blah, blah, blah. Embedded real-time operating system, mostly written in C. I don't see... Oh, wait, here it is.
Yeah, they bought it.
Was purchased by Microsoft. Okay.
Yeah. And look, and Rich, I don't expect you to listen. I don't expect anybody to listen to anything I do. So if you listen to the latest Linux for the Rest of Us, what I will say is we made it politically, ethically, fiscally, financially profitable for the wrong companies, in air quotes, to make the right decisions. Amongst them is Microsoft. Microsoft has made decisions we in the people who know can't believe that Microsoft has done some of the things that they've done in the last couple of years, and they've done it because we in the Linux open source world made it, forced them to do certain things because it was fiscally beneficial to them. This is the kind of example where they're literally going out of their way to invest in things that they wouldn't invest in. And now it just so happens they own the backbone to Raspberry Pis.
That's crazy.
Merry Christmas. It's no wake up, Dorothy. You're no longer in Kansas.
Okay, so we know what Freedom Bone doesn't run on. What is Freedom Bone?
Well, we brought it the previous week. Freedom Bone is almost like Freedom Box. Freedom Box was trying to be a platform for you to, in a very easy, simplified way, install services and servers onto a platform. Freedom Bone goes a little bit further with its software offerings. Basically, in one-click solutions, you can install things like Mumble servers, like what me and Rich are talking on now, IRC servers, Etherpad servers, DLNA streaming media servers, CryptPad servers, Baby Buddy server to help you keep track of your newborns' feedings, diapers, and eatings, kind of things. Mailpile, front end email client that you can connect to other email sources, Nextcloud, file storage, chat, video conferencing, and it just keeps going and going on. At least 30 or so server apps you can install in a very easy, friendly interface. Think of it as Diet Pie, but a little bit more graphical is the way I'll put it.
Okay, cool.
And I'll say this, there's a competition to Diet Pie, because listen, I like Diet Pie. I like Diet Pie a lot. But if Diet Pie has no competition, Diet Pie has no reason to innovate more and more and more. So I'm now trying to install Freedom Bone on more devices to at least, lend my support to more competition.
Cool.
Especially if I can get this link to be saved correctly in my bookmarking system. And then if I can even better have if this then that, save it as a link to our spreadsheet. I'll be even happier. Do you have any links in the notes you want to hurry up and shout out before I get rolling?
Oh, what's the one we mutually shared about the $39 Intel board? Here it is, 1027.
The Rock Pi X.
So this is the Rock Pi X. It's an Intel Cherry Trail board. All right, I didn't screw up on the cherry, but okay. Intel Cherry Trail board as low as $39. So it looks like you can get an Intel Atom X5 processor for $99. Let's see. Is that the same board? I believe you can get this. Yeah, okay. So it's system memory, you can get it up to 4 gigs of RAM. So I'm more and more in the ARM camp, but I also do enjoy an Intel board.
Oh yeah, I mean the beautiful thing about Intel boards is anything you want to run on them, you already know, what you can and can't run on it. There's no questions, there's no what ifs, there's no could be's, there's no compiling, there's no extra work that has to get involved. You literally just, apt install or whatever. The main reason this one caught my eye, granted, it's a good price. I'm always a fan of a good price. My Octoprint server now will never work with my camera again. My Logitech QuickCam Pro, I got 3 of them sitting here. They're the most supported webcam in the history of Linux. Yet I can't get the damn thing working. In short, yeah, I know if I install Octoprint on an x86 box, I know I can use it there. This is a system on a chip Intel Atom. Quad core processor, 1.44 gigahertz up to 1.8 turbo, which I believe is slightly better than the Atomic Pi. System memory, 1, 2, or 4 gig of RAM. Again, 4 gig of RAM. Looks sexy. Has micro SD SOT and an eMMC flash socket. Looks like it has at least a EDP and a MIP DSI connectors. Audio via HDMI 1.4 port, gigabit Ethernet. The Model B does have 802.11 BGN and AC, which is better. No Wi-Fi 6, but that's okay. Bluetooth 4.2, not Bluetooth 5. To me, that's still okay, but it does have low energy Bluetooth LE, which is good. Always like seeing that. USB 1 USB 3.0 port and 3 USB 2.0 port. To me, that's the biggest shortcoming with the Atomic Pi is you literally only have 1 USB port, which means if you want to do anything on it, you need to have a USB hub. So that right there is worth it. It also has 1 USB OTG Type-C port, which is always good. Raspberry Pi 40-pin connector. If you want to do projects, it's really nice to be able to piggyback off the ecosystem of the Raspberry Pi. So that's, really nice. I honestly don't like the power jack, but I'm never going to get my old faithful power connectors back again. It seems like, it does USB. Oh, okay. Yep. Never mind. Yep. And the form factor on this thing, I can't say it loud enough. This is literally crazy that you're getting this form factor with an Intel processor on it, and without the whole thing being like a complete heat sink. So I'm almost afraid how hot this thing will get.
Well, if you scroll down, you'll see a picture of it with a full-size heatsink.
Oh, the big bottom piece. Okay, well, that makes me does feel better. It does say also there's going to be basically 4 models. The Rock Pi X Model A, 1 gig 39, 2 gig 49, 4 gig 65. Rock Pi X Model B. The Model B is going to have the Bluetooth and the optional power over Ethernet and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. 1 gig 49, 2 gig 59, 4 gig 75.
That's a freaking steal.
Look, the 2 gig at 59 is an absolute steal alone. The Model A without the Wi-Fi and stuff on it, 1 gig $39, that's a steal. This is nothing but a deal, period. I will say, if you want to get this. I'm pretty sure as soon as they start to sell, they're going to be sold out. I don't think they're selling them yet. They did say that there's lack of HDMI audio on Intel Cherry Trail Bay Trail processors was fixed a few years ago, so I don't know why they even mentioned it. Yeah, I believe you cannot buy this yet. I will say I would like to, but like you, money's not flowing through the door to door geek household, so I'm gonna have to hold off. But I'm definitely gonna keep this in my
For me,
view.
it's like if money were water, it's like pouring it through a strainer. I get to keep whatever's moist on the strainer. Oh, the money flows. I just don't get to keep any.
Oh yeah, the money flows away, not in. Yeah. So and look, I want ARM to be as successful as it can possibly be. There's no way around it. I want ARM to compete. I want ARM to push. I want ARM to progress. But if I can save money, spend fair money, and get an Intel processor on a board, I'm also equally okay with that. Each board will have its individual purpose, and to help simplify my infrastructure is a way that I keep thinking of it. And the form factor of this thing, I absolutely love.
See, I'm looking at that. What I'm always looking to do is like bone up or amp up, I should say, my VMware Home Lab. Right now, I just have a single host. If And the problem with any of these single board computers, nothing ends up really much cheaper than a NUC, whether it's an i5 or an i3 NUC. Because once you get cases, power supplies, drives, and memory, you're almost always into the $400 range. So something like this, say you got four of the seven, let's just say it runs VMware, ESXi host. If you got four of these for 75 bucks, let's add another 10 bucks for the heatsink. So 150, $300, 390 for if you added the heat sinks, add another $10 for power supplies, that's 430. Memory cards, add another 10 bucks, so you're like 470. So for $470, if this runs ESXi, I've got four hosts. I can do failover. I can do all sorts of cool stuff in my home lab. And that would really be the cost of one Intel NUC setup to do it.
Yeah, and I really want the idea of load balancing and the idea of having clusters come down to the consumer grade easier, in a much easier fashion. Because I would love to say I'm running my Nextcloud in my house on like a fault tolerance system where any two of these systems can fail and there's no degradation in speed or performance. Thus, I could have ridiculous emergencies in my house and I could still have a system that's up and running. Now, with the current stuff I have, that's not easy to do. We're clustering like what is available in the enterprise was available equally as simply to the end user down in the residential level. I would be much more interested in doing it like now.
Oh yeah, and that's you can do with Kubernetes, which is basically management for Docker. You can have high availability in that. In other words, one thing can fail and it'll start up or run on the other or continue running on another piece of hardware. So yeah, that is very available. Oh, and speaking of failure, so the other thing, I haven't done it yet. So another, like the only thing growing in my Pi community or single board community is my do list. What I was trying to do before the power went out was to build, and James Middendorf gave it a name, the Plex on the go server, so that you could have something smaller than a brick, basically run it off like a RAV power, and either with a thumb drive or a solid state drive, a Pi 4, with an access point and a Plex server on it. So this way we have entertainment for when the power goes out, or cooler yet, if you're on an airplane, you could actually have a Plex server and you could share it out to the rest of the family without any wires.
Yeah, but I would willing to bet if at all you're going to rely on the airplane's connectivity, it's never going to be fast enough. So you'll have to include, a good access point with you to handle that kind of bandwidth.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I know at least 2 or 3 people that already do this. One of them was Tracy Holtz. The other one was Dan Fry. He would take his Plex solution on the road with him to where he could watch anything he wanted to wherever he was at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of do and don't have that. I use an HC1, so it's just sitting on my dresser over here.
Well, one link, honestly, 1029 in the notes. I first want to give a quick disclaimer, and that is, I hate saying it like this. I really do hate saying it like this, but we are witnessing the beginning of the end of Plex. Enjoy it while you can, love it while you can, use it while you can, because too many people in non-tech sectors are talking about Plex. And as soon as the wrong people realize that you can share, as soon as the wrong people figure out you can share copyright protected material amongst your friends, then they're going to start to insist that Plex gives up the ghost and tells people what kind of stuff is being shared and copied. And once that happens, expect Plex as an ecosystem to just disappear in like overnight, to just die. Because the whole reason Plex is as popular as it is I can rip my own DVDs, put them on my server, and then say to Rich, here, you have access to my library. If you don't have a set of Plex friends where you can browse their library and check stuff out, just shoot me an email. I'll give you a link to my stuff, and you'll see. It's literally as easy as browsing Netflix. But too many people in non-tech sectors are talking about it on podcast and bringing attention to it. And I've even heard Plex run advertisements on very non-tech focused podcast. So with that out of the way, the link is on make use of the best Plex apps to make Plex even better. There's like 2 or 3 admin type plugins where if you put them on your session, you can see who's connecting to it, when they're connecting to it, what kind of processor that they're using, and what kind of bandwidth that they're using against your network. So I could hypothetically say, Rich, can you go into your Plex settings and say, I don't need to see stuff in 4K because you're using all my bandwidth, bro. But if you keep going down, there's at least 1 or 2 of these plugins that I honestly think are pretty useful. Some of them reinstate plugin functionality that has been removed in Plex in the last 2 or 3 years that people used to really enjoy, is the way that I'll put it. Not just, but yes, the ability to literally put in basically BitTorrent links and just have the link to the .torrent file and basically stream stuff via a torrent right to your Plex instance. There's more than a couple plugins like that they've gotten rid of that are in this list, that there's ways you can bring them back, is what I'm going to say. So I think it was a pretty good list. Do you have any plugins on your Plex server there, Rich?
I'm just running pretty stock with sonar, radar, and transmission. That's what I do. I didn't no Plex plugins.
Gotcha. One of the plugins I thought was actually really cool was it allowed me to view any video on any website and then bookmark that page and it would basically have a link right in my library to that video, like it was in my library. And if I started watching it, stopped watching it, started watching it again on a different device, it would even start playback at the right spot.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, there was a couple ones like that I used to run that I really grew very fond of, and when they removed them, I got a little bit upset.
Because I know I've talked to Tracy Holtz about things, and he says, "Oh yeah, I bookmark it, and then it runs on my Plex server. It pulls it down, and
Yeah, he has either an old server that he hasn't upgraded, or he's doing the workaround to get old plugins to run again. But yeah, I mean, there's much more power and things out there you can do if you install your own plugins and do like the old end around. Okay, well, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which I will say was let's go with I'm gonna go with Forbes just to make people mad. Link 1031 in the notes. I will say this: Forbes.com is doing everything in its power to try to link to as many different things that happen everywhere, whether it be Hong Kong protest, whether it be Windows Server vulnerabilities, whether it be Azure expanding its market, whether it be a cheese dairy producer in the hills of Maryland, or whether it is a update about a Pine 64 device. And of course, we're going to be talking about the Pine 64 device. It was basically like sneakily announced, called Pine Time, which I will say they got the name right. Okay. Pine Time is a great name for a Pine 64 powered smartwatch. Now, there's a couple caveats that are going to come with this, and I didn't even read 3 words of these articles. But here's what you got to realize, people. There's no way the phone's going to last all day. Okay.
watch.
Part of the proprietary nature of companies like Apple, companies like Samsung, companies like Motorola, companies, making all these smart devices out there, is they do certain tricks to optimize the battery that they completely close source and are not available to everybody. So the battery optimizations on this Linux smartwatch are not going to be great and grand. If it lasts for 16 hours, consider yourself lucky. Really lucky. It's literally, from what I look at, it's literally going to be running a Linux operating system, which is perfectly supposed to be intended as a companion device to your Linux smartphone.
Who would make a Linux smartphone?
Well, there's actually already 2 out there on the market. One of them is from Norway. It's running Sailfish OS, but Pine 64 people say it's approaching when their Pine phone is going to be released. And there is a Purism Librem 5, which I think is literally like $1,000 phone, so I'm never buying that. But the Linux powered Pine phone is literally only going to cost, they believe, about $100, and they believe this Pine Time smartwatch is literally going to be about $25.
Do they live in a sleeping bag on the curb? I don't know what they do and how they do it. I'm shocked.
Well, I'll say this. It's painfully obvious they're not into things for blanket immediate profits. They don't want immediate profits. They want to make an impact. Dare I say, Rich, you've been there. You're at a place of work. A boss gets fired. A new boss comes in. The only thing that boss wants to do is make an immediate impact and show how valuable I am, why you need me. that's what Pine people have seemingly been doing for years now. They're not in it for profit. They just want to show how impactful they can be and why the community needs them around. And honestly, I'm buying it hook, line, and sinker.
You know what? I'm thinking about the old door sage telling me you need to support them if they do what you want. I'm like, I'm gonna buy two. Because
Yeah, for
$35 watch? Hell yeah.
yes, exactly. For that price, why not?
I want to give it away to somebody.
Well, I could see literally buying 3 extra and literally put them by my light switches, literally super glue them to the wall with a little thing and just have it as a little instant display and touch interface. Yeah, and now here's the real kicker. What people have to understand is they're selling this thing for $25. Okay?
With a charger.
With a charger, with a band, with everything else. Do y'all really think that other smartphones are actually worth $400 or $500? No, absolutely not. They might be worth $70 at the most. There's almost no smartphone out there I consider, or smartwatch I consider to be fairly priced, even remotely fairly priced, because I've had like now 3 of them. I've had Pebble watches, I've had Fitbits, I've had Asus watches. They're all basically completely crap, and they're all basically completely overpriced.
Okay, I got the Gear S3. In my summary of it, I've been wearing every day for I don't know how many months now. I guess since April or maybe earlier. And the way I look at it is, if you were going to buy a $200 watch, you might as well buy this one. I do like the notifications. Sleep as Android is really good as a sleep app. The heart rate monitor, I was kind of bummed. I was at the gym doing boot camp wearing it, and it didn't seem to really record my peak. But anyhow, it has some fun things to it, but it's not. And pretty much everybody I've asked, although, guy that sits next to me at work, his Apple Watch saved his life. He had an abnormal heart rate like twice over 2 weeks. He was like 30 for a period of time, and his watch warned him, and he just thought the sensor was bad. And one day we're at work, we're gonna, a vendor is taking us out to lunch. It's like, you're not going for a free lunch, play dice. He's like, I don't feel good. I think I'm going to the doctor. That was it. That night he got a pacemaker.
Maybe he had the abnormal heartbeat because he stupidly spent too much money on a watch and he was stressed over his bills. Just saying.
I would have been there behind him if that was the case.
Yeah, so there's at least 2 links in the notes. One of them was to forums. The other one is to Linux in Linux in the cider. It's obvious. I'll say this. To me, it's obvious when I'm a fan of something. I really wish I could afford the Pinebook Pro right now. I would have bought one.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of feel bad about that.
I know. I think I will be able to afford a Pine Tab when it comes out, because it's literally only going to be $100, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to afford a Linux smartwatch when it comes out. Because here's the thing: because it's Linux, because it's a smartwatch, I don't care if it's meant to be paired with a Linux phone. Because it's an open source watch, I guarantee I can still get it to work with things I want it to work with, because that's what open source means.
I have a contact, let me just say. And I have a stealth contact in the Pine world. And I intentionally haven't contacted them because I figure they're busy doing good things. And I'm like, usually they tell me something before it happens, and I didn't get any notice this time. So I'm very excited for them. This is fantastic.
Very cool. Another link I wanted to bring up here, Rich. It's only because we in the past have at least mentioned or talked about set-top boxes. Line 1022 in the notes there, Rich. Okay. There is at least 2 or 3 years of people selling what I can only consider to be very low rate, very budget-oriented Android set-top boxes promising the world. There's little doubt in my mind, at least 80 plus percent of these boxes where you could buy them on eBay or Amazon or anything else never got any updates on them, much less security updates on them. I'm a firm believer 99.999% of the people in first worlds don't need to worry about security updates, because if you become a targeted individual, it doesn't matter if you have security updates. And if you're not a targeted individual, you don't need the security updates. It's one of those things. But there's enough of these IoT devices out there, enough of these set-top boxes out there that have never got updates, that it makes it easy for these malware authors to basically spray and pray. There's enough of these out there that they can just put the code out there and infect tens of thousands of devices with very little effort. And because they're set-top boxes, people don't use them 24 hours a day, nor do they monitor what's actually going on with them. So it's a really hot target of infection. But there's an IoT botnet that's basically hitting these Android set-top boxes. The easy way to do it, to test to see if your Android set-top box is hackable, is literally to go to any Linux command prompt on any device, find out the IP address of your Android set-top box. You can go to your router setting, the DHCP list, and you'll see it listed there. Then go to any Linux terminal and just basically type SSH space root at the IP address of this device space, and I believe it's -P 5555. And then it will attempt to make an SSH connection to that Android set-top box over port 5555. And if that port is even open, then there's a chance that your manufacturer left all the credentials as default to that port. And if so, then it's an infectable device. This is another reason to take anything that's not trusted, that you don't have implicit control over and implicit trust with, to put it on a secondary network in your house. There's a good reason to have, let's just say, the dad network, and then the family network, and then the device network, to literally have 3 access points, because I don't want my kids or my wife anywhere by my data, because they are definitely easier to hack. And then the IoT devices are even easier to hack. I don't want them anywhere around my kids.
So on a good ASUS router, and I'm talking routers that are 5 years old, you can have a guest Wi-Fi network in your regular network, which is basically a VLAN. If you put on any of the more advanced software, you can have multiple VLANs set up, and that'll partition off that space. There's higher end routers you can get. There's, you can roll your own router and do the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you need a second router, just mail at podnutz.com. I got a couple sitting here. I'll mail you one. And I'll say this: they don't say it's SSH; they say it's ADB. But I could have swore ADB was basically just over the normal SSH port. I could be mistaken.
The other thing you can do is, maybe you're not familiar with your home router, or maybe your home router doesn't give you a list, which is kind of shocking because they have for more than 10 years now. You can use Angry IP Scanner, and I think you can even show ports on Angry IP Scanner. If not, what was the old hacking tool from more than 10 years ago?
Nmap.
Yep, Nmap, yes. Thanks.
Yeah, and there's definitely tools on Android you can get, network scanners that will literally just scan your entire subnet and try its best to list all the devices on your network. So yeah, it's good to know what's going on your network. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is ignorance. Once in a while you gotta Joe it, and you gotta know, because if you don't know, then you're losing half the battle.
Yeah, which, having a bunch of devices on your network is a pain in the butt. If you shut them down for the hurricane, then you got to power everything up again. I was, My lights, certain lights are on a home automation assistant, only controllable by that. And I'm like, I asked Google to turn the light on, and then it didn't go on. I'm like, what happened? I'm like, oh crap, I didn't power that stuff up. Oh, and so two funny automations happened to me recently. The garage door closing automatically at 9:55 p.m. if it detects it's open, because at 9:55 the garage door will close if it's open, and at 10 o'clock the alarm sets. Which, if you heard, I had the microphone keyed. You heard like a ding and a door slam. That's a notification to me that my alarm at the house set. And the other automation was kind of funny. I have an automation that turns off the laser jet in my office at 11 o'clock. And my daughter started printing just before 11 o'clock. It's like, why'd you turn off the printer? I'm like, I didn't turn it off. And then I'm laying in bed. I'm like, the automation struck. But one more thing I want to talk about, kind of get in if I can, is Balena.
Have we heard of that OS before?
I haven't heard of it.
Something about it like rings a bell, but I can't tell if it's just because it's a non, um, like a really unique or different name, or it's
Well,
that I've heard of it before.
of course, are you half making a joke here? Are you teasing me?
Nope.
Okay, well, Etcher is now owned by Balena. So they now have
That's where I've
Balena
seen the name.
OS.
Okay.
So Dor and I were chatting about this earlier today, and what I think is interesting about this is it's kind of a whole ecosystem. So Balena has a 64-bit OS for the Raspberry Pi 4. I guess it'd be very simple for it to be compatible with a Raspberry Pi 3, which was also 64-bit. But like I was talking about earlier in the podcast, one of the cool things you can do with the extra RAM is running containers, Docker containers. Well, they have a list of Docker containers that you can run. And so that's all built into this Balena OS. So it says they have 26,000 container-based images. Now, I don't believe they're all ready for the Raspberry Pi. I believe some of them are ARM-based, I'm sorry, Intel-based. But you can go through and take a look at containers. One of the cool things about a container is if you have a project that you want to install and it's many multiple steps that are easy to screw up, or maybe there's updates between when the how-to article is written and you actually go to do the install and it doesn't work right. Like I spent an hour one day trying to do a machine learning thing on the Raspberry Pi, and it ended up not working because there were updates, etc. Well, what you can do for something like Snips, which is your own, basically like Google Home, it does voice recognition. So there's a container for Snips. So you could load this and then pretty much with one line of code, type in what you need to download and start Snips running. Are you yawning on me?
Nope.
So there's a whole bunch of things that a container, just like a virtual machine, does for you. Is you really don't have to install the software. You just have to load the container and it'll run and log in and have at it. So you don't have to do that complex install.
Yeah, see, that's what Docker can do for you. And I will say this, it also mentions on the page, and I never actually heard, I believe, any other podcast talk about this, but it's spelled Yocto, Yocto. We've talked about Yocto, I'm going to say a year and a half ago, at least a year ago. This is another approach to making packages, in air quotes, configurations for software to run on single board computers. So it isn't just using IoT and edge Docker type stuff. It's also using Yocto. And to me, that's the thing. When it comes to this kind of solution, you cannot rely on a single source to do things. You have to start to rely on multiple sources. And the key is making it as an administrator that you don't have to pick which one you want to use. You just search for a solution and it basically knows which tool to use. So this is very cool. I want this to grow. I want this to get better. I want this to become easier for the straights to use. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, because this is exactly what I'm looking for in the single board computer world, especially a 4 gig single board computer world.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any more you wanted to bring up? Because there was at least one more I wanted to bring up.
The only thing I didn't read, I just saw the title, was the N2 set-top box.
Can't say I remember that one.
Oh, here it is. 1022.
Oh, okay. So this here's one of the things I don't understand. Um, they already launched this thing. They launched this thing at least like 5 months ago.
Hmm.
But now they're releasing a package. I'm guessing I'm going to say a configured package from hard kernel o-droid N2, media center e e edition, starting at $65. First, I'll say a media center computer for $65 is fine. It's a fine price. It's a fair price. It isn't fantastic or crazy, but it's fine. And I will say the case and the lid to this thing at least isn't audacious. So if you put this next to your TV, it's not going to look, completely out of place. It actually can kind of fit.
So the N2 is sandwich sized, which is actually I really like my N2. I haven't really kicked the tires on it too hard yet. But one of the big pluses on the N2 is gigabit Ethernet, HDMI port, 4 USB 3 ports. That's a big deal. So if you want to connect up storage, you got that. What I was doing, I was testing. Oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember the software name. What is the software I've been playing with that allows you to use all sorts of disks? LVM, Logical Volume
Yeah.
Manager. So, Logical Volume Manager, I was running on a Pine 64 Pro because it has a PCI slot, and I was able to put a 7-port USB 3 board in there and hook up a whole bunch of USB 3 drives to it. And I was running Plex on the o-droid N2. o-droid N2 is great. Big heatsink, didn't get overly hot. I've watched the CPU. I think there's a stink load of potential in there. $75 for the 4 gig version, fully decked out. I wouldn't bat an eye at that if that's what I was looking for. If I was looking for a media center set-top box, what is the output? I know it's got HDMI. Does it do 4K 60 frames a second?
Yeah, it says it does 4K HDR, which I believe is 60 frames a second.
Okay, yep, 4K HDR.
Yeah, this is definitely a higher end board focused towards NAS/home theater type of experiences. And I do think the price is a fair price. Having this offered as a bundle, $75, I think is definitely comparable. If I didn't already have a home theater computer upstairs that was running absolutely fine, I would definitely entertain the idea of getting this.
I'm just curious, at Ameridroid, what's the current price? I'm looking it up now.
A Maridroid is typically quick to release items, but it's sometimes a little bit behind in offering bundles and such.
So right now, Ameridroid is saying it's $71.95 for the 4 gig version. As of 9/12/19, the 4 gig is out of stock. So I don't know where in this ad they're getting the media center set up, but that's a damn good deal if you get the case and the power and SD card, micro SD card. That is, that's a really good deal.
They were offering it basically directly from hard kernel themselves, and at least in our past, when we look at buying stuff directly from hard kernel, you typically have a fair amount of shipping price you have to pay.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying fair, got to make sure that it doesn't sound facetious. You're paying, it's not like Amazon, you're not paying nothing. You're paying a reasonable cost, right?
Yeah, if this is a $70 device, I would expect to pay nearly $20 or maybe $22 or $23 in shipping. And honestly, it's because they're basically shipping it from South Korea. Where with a Maridroid, I believe they're shipping it from Texas.
Ooh, and I got to throw dirt on AliExpress. I ordered 3 of the ESP32 cams. They said they were delivered. Guess what?
No sign of them.
Now, USPS says it was delivered at a specific time on a specific day, but I don't have them. And AliExpress says, well, they say they were delivered, we're closing it. And they got my $21. So I'm a little unhappy.
Well, I'm happy it was just $21.
Yep. I'm calling my credit card company.
Yep, and that's why I always tell everyone in every shape, way, or form, always use your credit card, never use debit card, never use anything else, always use the credit card.
Correct amundo.
Okay, this thing I just want to talk about really quick, 1035 in the notes, Rich. Nextcloud, okay, just in case you're new to the show, Nextcloud is a system that was forked from OwnCloud, which was launched about 5 years ago. Then it then had a large investment from private companies, and private companies took the project at a direction that the original author did not appreciate. So he said, I'm going to take the open source part of this and start over again and start from scratch kind of thing. And then he launched Nextcloud. In a matter of weeks, he was about to surpass OwnCloud is what it felt like. It might have taken months, but it seemed like in weeks he was already he was already doing better than OwnCloud ever could have done. Okay. A lot of these things I'm going to mention are much more business focused, enterprise grade kind of thing, but I will tell people these are the kind of things that residential people can also benefit from greatly. Okay. Nextcloud 17, which I believe just dropped for certain users, is going to be released to the public here very shortly, scales up and improves data protection with features like remote wipe. Okay, if you have a computer and you have Nextcloud installed and you're connected to my Nextcloud service and you're a jerk, I can then go into my Nextcloud server and say, wipe your folders with my data on it. Okay, as an enterprise administrator, that is extremely powerful. If you have Android loaded up and you have Nextcloud installed and you have folders synced from my server, I can say wipe those folders. That is really good, is what I'm going to say. But that's only the first feature. You then have collaborative text editor. I'm not going to claim and say it's a super rich text editor. It's no competition to Google Docs. It's no competition to Office 365, but it is a collaborative text editor. Okay. It's only going to get better. You also have 2-factor updates. So they're extending their support to being able to log in, forcing people to use two factors, like a 4-digit code from your phone and a password, that kind of thing. It's also going to have IBM Spectrum scale support and global scale improvements. And I tried to read up on that at least a little bit, Rich. And it's the kind of thing I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. What it sounded like is it was something on the back end file system to make sure that you had less downtime, easier, quicker backups with less strain on
Okay,
that
it
system.
says S3 versioning support. I'm assuming what that means is like a versioning file system.
Yeah, it to me it was almost like a version of like the Windows previous versions where you can say keep like 3 versions of this file, 4 versions of this file, but the way that the IBM Spectrum thing did it was much less intensive as what they were trying to use in the past, because they had versioning in the past that I know of.
Well, Vax VMS had versioning.
Yeah. So I am really like happy to see Nextcloud continuing, and this is the only way I can put this, continuing to push competition, continuing to innovate, continuing to making my experience unbelievably smooth, unbelievably easy, unbelievably solid, and dare I say, really secure. I love the fact that I can send a link to somebody and say, expire that link in 24 hours. I really like the fact that I can host my own Jabber server, which is almost like IRC, and invite people in and call them a jerk and then say, I never said anything like that, and then delete it. And they have no proof it ever happened. So I'm really happy that Nextcloud keeps innovating. If I go like 2 months without any kind of news in my stream about Nextcloud doing something grand, then I'm going to start to worry.
Oh yeah, they're definitely good stuff. I'll tell you. So my workflow process for doing YouTube videos, I shoot all my videos on my phone, and sometimes it's a real pain in the ass to get them off the phone. But with Nextcloud and Wi-Fi, it's really easy. So I just, send it to my Nextcloud server, and then I pull them up on my Mac into iMovie or DaVinci Resolve and edit them.
Yeah, and if you don't want it to be publicly addressable over the public internet, you can literally just launch up the Nextcloud server on your own local network and then just point your local phone or local laptop to that local IP address, and it works just as fine.
Yep. Yeah, and I like that. I like that ability to move files around, and it's kind of like Google Drive for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it a couple other things below the fold is the way I'll put it. They actually have secure mailbox and Outlook add-on, which that just blows my mind. They have LDAP write support, which means in Nextcloud you can manage Active Directory users. At least something you can manage them. So something about them you can manage, which that onto itself is honestly kind of amazing. Yeah, the IBM Spectrum scale allows for huge data sets. So you can literally have like a 20 petabyte drive accessible via Nextcloud using the IBM Spectrum scale. That's what that was. So it's really cool. And I will say this: if you want to know what Nextcloud looks like, and you never ran it before, just send us an email. I'll definitely help guide you through the process. It can be very easy if you choose the right path, or it can be incredibly cumbersome and incredibly difficult if you do not choose the right path. So, hey, Rich, if people want to catch up with you, what's the simplest, easiest way for people to do that?
Definitely go to flyingrich.com. Check out my latest YouTube video on making my favorite meal in the entire world. It's my filet mignon with red wine reduction sauce. And if you want to contact me, just click contact, fill out the form, and boom, it sends me an email.
I'm pretty sure you had me at filet there, Rich. I will say you mentioned flaming on. I'm almost talking to the wife to see if we could get. I want to say it's called a sous vide.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dan talks about that all the time.
Yeah. It's basically a water system. It's a water pump, water heating system where you can basically set a temperature, quote unquote, the perfect temperature. Put the meat in the bag in the water, walk away. Even if you overcook it by like 6 hours, it's still going to be at that perfect temperature. So, so if you like stuff medium rare, it will always be medium rare. The idea of that amazes me. The only problem is they're still like over $100 a pop.
Yeah, they're pretty pricey. Just so everybody understands what we're talking about. The idea is you take whatever meat it is and you put it in a Ziploc bag. You suck out the air. I'm sure they have a fancy bag they'll sell you too. You put water in a pot, you fill it up, and you put this heating element in the water. And I guess it's microprocessor controlled, so it maintains the temperature correctly. So it's um, you do have to make sure the water doesn't boil off over time. You're never going to be cooking at 212 degrees, but you do have natural evaporation occurring and more so at a higher temperature. But apparently, the big deal is whatever meat you cook has all of the juices, it's not dried out, and it's exactly right.
Yeah. Out and Brown just restarted Good Eats. I can't remember what it's Reloaded. Good Eats Reloaded. If you ever didn't like cooking shows, I encourage you check out Good Eats. And he went over the sous vide, and I believe he likes to first take the hunk of meat and put it in a pan and sear it like as much as
Oh
he
yeah.
possibly can, then put it in the water device. And then, when you cut it, it's literally like something out of a magazine. It's like exactly the inside you expected. Because if you don't like well done and you don't like rare, 9 out of 10 times when you go to a restaurant that's not called Ruth Chris and you order a steak, it almost never comes out how you asked for it to be. With this thing, it always comes out of the water exactly how you asked it to come out as, because the temperature control is so tight. Yeah, but I digress. But that's a good IoT thing maybe I could do. I don't know. If anybody wants to send us an email, do not forget minipc@podnutz.com. We definitely like getting emails from people. Brian is a very hardworking man, or else he would be here again tonight. So if you want to ask Brian questions about higher end mini PCs that look sexy, just send us an email in at minipc@podnutz.com. If you want to be a Patreon, it's patreon.com/the-mini-PC-show. I believe links for all of them are going to be in the notes. And if you do not mind, I will ask you basically just send us an email. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there are things that we are not talking about that we should, kind of like 5150 always did. And with that, I want to thank everyone for downloading. Thank Rich for coming out. Thank Brian for trying to come out. And we will talk to everyone again real soon. It's Cloud. And we are still streaming. Yeah, I still don't completely get Docker. You're not streaming anything. Don't hear nothing.
Okay, so the best way I heard Docker explained is it's the Linux user space encapsulated. So where the app would be running, that user space that's what's, instead of the whole Linux system, it's just that space.
Well, that's not good because that's the space I don't want to have to download again. That's the space I want to configure once, and have the system part I re-download again, not the user space. That's why I don't get it.
So
Because to
basically,
me, the user space is settings and configuration. The system space should be the application.
all right, maybe I am describing it wrong. Seems like Chatter on the Wire knows more about it.
There's a lot of people that know more than me, is what I'll say. And I know that I'm missing something about it because my logic is I want to download a container, let's just say Nextcloud, configure it with all the settings, all the users, all the whatever, all the parameters, all the everything. And then I want to basically, and then I believe there's a way I can save that configuration off, upgrade the Docker every time there's an upgrade, and then just reapply my configuration. In any of the Docker interfaces, I've never been able to figure out how the hell to do that because every time I reboot, I lose everything I did. And I know I'm doing it wrong.
Okay, Chatter on the Wire mentioned this Cloudlet case. So it allows you to drop 8 Raspberry Pis in. $59, not too bad price.
I think we heard about that one before, didn't we?
8 bays or 2.5-inch hard drives. All right, so room for an 8-port switch. So it's just a case for $60. Okay, it doesn't include fans or anything, but you can outfit it. Okay, I mean, it's nice.
It is. Dang.
Does it include the fans? Let's see. Blah,
Be
blah,
nice if
blah.
it did. It does say includes 4 50 by 50 millimeter quiet fans for active
Okay. All right. So, all right, $59 is, not an incredible great price, but it's a reasonable price.
Yeah.
Now, if it came with a power supply.
Well, yeah. Yeah. It's good if you don't want to worry about the case ever.
Yeah, it looks real nice. And yeah, I have at least 8 Pis or Pi-sized devices.
All right, Rich, I'm going to hang up and edit the show.
Alrighty, buddy.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for 4 people watching. Is it you, me, and 2 other people?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At one point there was like 7 people.
Alrighty, guys. Well, good night then.
Take it easy. Why isn't there a go? Huh. Well, that's confusing. Oh, yeah, that is. Okay, so now let's try to click end stream.